Hey, my friends, welcome to part 2 of this exciting story of this gentleman's collection of Indian artifacts and relics and a couple of bears is on its way across the Atlantic Ocean to England, where they would be displayed in the Egyptian building at Piccadilly Square. And yeah, it's a harrowing adventure. I hope you liked part 1, and I think you will enjoy part 2, which is now. The third day of the gale became the most alarming, and the night of that day closing in upon us seemed like the gloomy shroud amidst the hurrying winds and the crackling spars that was to cover us in death. Until this day, though swinging and now and then jumping from mountains to mountains of waves, the ship and the elements mingled our fears with amusement. When, however, these guys had a weird sense of humor then. When, however, this day's light was gone, curiosity's feast was finished, and fear was no longer chained under our feet. We had reached the climax of danger, and terror seemed to have seized and reigned through every part of the ship. The bears, in contemplative or other vein, had been mute, but this gloomy hour, seeming to have lost all patience, added at first their piteous howlings, and then their horrid growls, to the whistling of the winds, and next the gnashing of their teeth, and their furious lurches and bolts and blows against the sides of their cages, the crackling of spars and roaring of the tempest. Curiosity again, in desperate minds, was resuscitated and taking in its insatiable draughts, even in this midst of this jarring and discordant medley of darkness, of dashing foam, of cracking masts, and of howlings and growlings and raging of grizzly bears. For when the lightnings flashed, men and even women were seen crawling and hanging about the deck, as if to see if they could discover the death that was ready with his weapon drawn to destroy them. The captain had 20 times ordered all below, but no purpose, until the indiscriminate confusion of his crew and passengers in the jet blackness of the gale, when his ship was in danger and our lives, his trumpet announced that the bears were on deck. "Good God!" it was exclaimed, and echoed from one end of the ship's deck to the other. "The grizzly bears are out! Down with the hatches! Down the hatches!" Wow. The scrambling that here took place to reach the cabins below can only be justly known to each actor who performed his part in his own way, and of these there were many. Some descended headlong, some sideways, and others rolled down, and everyone with a ghastly glance back upon the one behind him, as the grizzly bear, of course, that was to begin chawing the next moment. When the scrambling was all over and the hatches all safe, all in the cabin were obliged to smile for a moment, even in the midst of the alarm, at the queer position and maneuvers of the plump little Irish woman who had slipped down the wrong hatchway by accident and left her other half to spend a night of, this is a cool word, illibecy, and of awful forebodings in that steerage where she would have gone, but to which her own discretion, as well as the united voices of the cabin passengers, decided her not to attempt to make her way over the deck during the night. The passengers, both fore and aft, were now all snugly housed for the rest of the night. To his hands aloft and stamping of the men on deck, while handling the ropes and shifting of the sails, were all caught by our open ears and at once construed into assaults and dreadful conflicts with the grizzly bears on deck. In the midst of these conjectures, some of these passengers screamed and sprang near the stairway entering the cabin, when it was discovered, to the thrilling amazement of all, that one of the bears had pawed open the hatchway and was descending into the cabin. The ladies' salon beyond beyond the cabin was the refuge to which the instant rush was making. Excuse me. When the always good and musical sound of the captain's voice was recognized. "Why, you don't think I'm a grizzly bear, do you?" The good fellow, he didn't intend to frighten anybody, because it was the captain, not a bear. He had just raised the hatch and came down to get a little breath and a drop to drink. He is unlikely to a grizzly bear as anyone else in the world, both in looks and in disposition. But he happened to have on for the occasion a black oilcloth hood or cap, which was tied under the chin, and the jacket covered with long fur on the outside, making his figure, which was of goodly size, and which just filled the gangway, with a little of the lively imagination belonging to such moments, look the counterpart of a grizzly bear, he did. "Where's Catlin?" said he. "Damn the bears! Are they out?" cried the passengers. Altogether, "Out? Yes, they're out. They have eaten one man already, and another was knocked overboard with a handspike. He was mistaken for one of the bears. We are all in this mess on deck. It is so dark we can't see each other. The men are aloft in the rigging. Steward, give me a glass of brandy and water. The ship must be managed, and I must go on deck. Keep close below here and keep the hatches down, for the Bruins are sick of the scene and pawing about for a burrow in the ground, and we'll have the hatches up in a moment if you don't look to them." "Where's Caitlin?" "We don't know," was the reply from many mouths. "He's not in the cabin." "Well, here, Mr. Captain, your honor, I'll tell ye," said the poor fellow, who, in the general fright and flight, had tumbled himself by accident into the cabin and observed sullen silence until the present moment. "I'll just tell ye, I saw Mr. Catlin. I suppose he's the gentleman that owns the beasties, and his mom, Dan, for I've known Dan and his man, Dan, for I have known Dan for these many long years, and would Merkley, and I know he has been charging the bears on board." This is written like the man was speaking, and so it's hard to pronounce some of the words because he's speaking in his dialect. So that's why I'm stumbling on some of these. "I saw too, God bless him, them when the beasties was about getting their hinder parts out of the cage, standing on the side just before him, Mr. Catlin, with his double barrel gun, and his man Dan pointed at him in the face, and with a pistol in each hand. And this was just when I heard they were out, and I jumped down here just in the wrong place, as I am after observing when it's too late, and I hope there's no offense to your honor." "Caitlin's gone then," said the captain. "He is swallowed?" And the captain was at his post again, the hatches closed, and in the midst of dozing and praying and singing, and occasionally the hideous howling of the grizzlies whenever a wave made a breach over the deck and the vessel, was passed away that night of alarm and despair, until the rays of the morning sun, having chased away the mist and assuaged the fury of the storm, had brought all hands together on deck, and in the midst of them the cheerful face of our good captain, and in their huge cage, which had been driven from one side of the deck to the other, but now adjusted, sitting upon their haunches, with the most jaded and humiliating looks imaginable. And as they gazed between the iron bars, the two grisly majesties, who had hurt nobody during the night, nor in all probability had meditated anything worse or more sinful than escape, if possible, from the imprisonment and danger they considered themselves unfortunately in. In the general alarm and the scramble on the deck, and the forepart of the night, the total darkness having been such, it was impossible to tell whether the bears were out of their cage or not, and quite impossible to make one's way to the quarterdeck unaccustomed to the shape of things to be passed over. Mr. Catlin, he dropped himself into the steerage as the nearest refuge, just before the hatch was fastened down for the night. Any place and anything under deck at the time was acceptable, and even at so perilous a moment. And amidst such alarming apprehension, I drew a fund of amusement from the scenes and conversations around me. The circumstances of 60 passengers, men, women, and children, being stowed into so small a compass, and to so familiar an acquaintance would have been alone and under different circumstances a subject of curious interest for a stranger so suddenly to be introduced to. But to be dropped into the midst of such a group in the middle of the night, in the thickest of raging tempest, and an hour of danger when some were in bed, some upon their knees at their prayers, others making the most of the few remaining drops of brandy they had brought with them, and others were playing cards and enjoying the jokes, and altogether just rescued from the jaws and claws of the bear over their heads, was one of no common occurrence, and worthy, at least, of a few passing remarks. The wailings of the poor fellow whose wife had got into the cabin were incessant, and not much inferior to the howlings of the grizzly bears on deck. She had been put into my berth, and I had had the privilege of turning in with her disconsolate husband, if I had seen fit to have done so, or if his writhings and contortions had not taken up full twice the space allotted to him. It was known and told to him by some of his comrades that they saw his wife go into the cabin and that she was safe. Yes, said he, but I'm uneasy. I am not easy about her, do you see? I don't fail to say she's there. God knows where, along with those gentlemen. So amongst the passengers in this part of the vessel, I at once found myself alongside in at least two different very eccentric characters. The one afterwards learned familiarly called by the passengers the little Irishman in black, and the other the half-Englishman or broken-down swell. So, the storm had broken, the danger was over for that round of danger. There are other exciting chapters in this book. If you're interested in hearing more from the book, please let me know, and I'll follow it up with another video. So for the time being, I hope you've enjoyed this. John Robinson and Paris and Jim and everybody out there that I love and treasure dearly. I hope to see you all again real soon on the other side of that screen. God bless you. Keep you safe, well, warm, and happy. Later, my friends.